Well, welcome back to another episode of the podcast series, The Leader Within. Today, I get to interview special guest Tiffany Castagno. She's a CEO and founder of CEPHR LLC, which is a human resources consulting firm based in Pittsburgh that supports small to mid sized businesses to build strong infrastructures, employer brands, and cultures. Tiffany is from Milwaukee and began her HR career there. She has 15 years of experience in human resources, is a Jefferson Award recipient, and is co author of a children's book, Can a Zebra Change Its Stripes? That teaches children about embracing differences and uncovers the importance of acceptance and what it means to make diversity our strength. So, welcome, Tiffany. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I'm excited to learn a little bit more about how you discovered your passion and niche.
Thank you so much, Angela. I'm so glad that Gil introduced us. He's told me wonderful things about you. I'm excited to be here. I know we're going to have a powerful conversation. And um, I came into HR from an experience as an employee that I didn't always find positive. So I didn't always work in the best environments. I wasn't always getting the answers to the questions I needed. And I found like, even if I'm asking a simple benefits question, like employees deserve the answer to those things. I also found that people weren't knowledgeable about it or they weren't willing to go and seek the knowledge out. So none of us can know everything, right? But they weren't really willing to go that extra step to really seek out the answers and follow up. Follow up was another piece that was really critical that was missing. And I'm like, of course, in my infinite wisdom at this early stage of my life, was like, I can do this better. I can help people. People deserve better. I deserve better. And so I was like, let me look into this HR thing. Like many of us, we don't really know what it's about. And so I decided to discover what it was. I was pre law at one point and then decided, well, if I have a family, I don't want to be away from them this often. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll look into social work. And then when I had these employee experiences, my social work program actually had a 4-year wait. And I was like, that's not going to happen or I'll never go to school. And so found myself into these situations and decided, let's look at, how we can impact the employee experience. This HR thing seems pretty cool. And I've never really looked back. So I've been doing this, as you said, for 15 years and really across those 15 years focused as a business partner and a generalist because I wanted to explore all the functions of HR, not just part of it. And so 3 years ago started Sepher, and that has been a joy and a gift and a challenge, and it's grown me in ways I haven't expected in partnering with small to medium businesses. And really the reason I chose that niche is because were my favorites to work in, as were nonprofits. And so I really have a special heart for that. And here we are today, 3 years later. It's wild.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey with us. And along the way, who has kind of helped you with the success trajectory, whether it's in like the corporate world or in your business? Like, what are the attributes of that leader or mentor that really helped you?
Ooh, I love this question. Thank you. There have been more than one person. I think, I'm really an avid believer in mentorship, sponsorship. And for me, it started with a couple of leaders who were really amazing and took me under their wing. One of them promoted me under her. And part of that scary journey was, hey, you're ready to do public speaking. You're going to speak in front of all these leaders and talk about all the HR things. You're really great at what you do. You have a strategic mindset. And I'm like, no, 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 pump the brakes. I'm not ready to go there. And they're like, you are, and you're going to do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And at the time I thought, wow, like you're not listening to my needs. And now I look and I'm constantly doing some sort of speaking. And so it really has paid off. But it was an interesting journey to get there. Also, I have a couple of women entrepreneurs who I just feel like I'm so indebted to helping me. One is a current client. One is someone who I met through a colleague who said, hey, she has a really successful business. You should talk to her. She's here in Pittsburgh. And they've been so influential as to like giving over words of wisdom, giving me advice because I'm not from Pittsburgh, as you shared with your guests. We've shared with the audience that I'm from Milwaukee. And so getting tapped in here was a hurdle in and of itself, even while working for another company. And so that was a lot of it, is introducing me to the right people, sharing their wisdom, telling me things that I had no idea you had to worry about in entrepreneurship, and just really helping connect me into a solid foundation. So I don't think I'd be here without them. So thanks, Mary Jane and Jess. I tell them all the time too.
Amazing. And I think you touched on something that I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into. You said at that time, I didn't feel like my needs were heard. But looking back, it's like that is what I needed in order to get to where I am today, right? So, as a leader, what would you say is like, okay, this is the fine dance between actually hearing and seeing potential versus assessing. No, let's maybe take a step back a little bit longer. Like, how would you even um, advise a new leader for that matter on something like this?
It's such an important question, and I appreciate it because even hearing you like say it back was like, wow, this is mentorship, this is leadership, because we don't always, especially when we're new into our career or we're new into leadership, we don't always get set up for success, or we don't always have the tools because we don't even know what we don't know. And the same was true for me in this entrepreneurship journey. We don't know what questions to ask. We don't know what we should or shouldn't be doing unless and until somebody helps and guides us. And that is the role of a leader. Coming into the role as a new leader, I think I would say, be curious, invite that curiosity as a leader and a mentor of a new leader, and set them up with the foundation that maybe you didn't have, or what are all those unknowns and all the uncertainty, which really, when we don't have that, then it can lower our self-esteem and our confidence. But when we feel equipped with the right things and we know we have a solid foundation, then we really feel that. Because I know even in the folks who I mentor, it's our job as leaders, as mentors, to see the things beyond, to see that potential. You said, even when we're in the recruitment process, which a lot of employers miss, and we do that poorly, we're like, let's see, they don't have all these things. Well, what about the things that they have that are going to bring uniqueness to your organization? So seeing around those corners is a lot of stuff I do in my mentorship, my leadership, in the consulting business. So it's really quite a fascinating thing. And I thank you for that question, because I'm going to sit with this today.
I love that. And you kind of touched on like the recruitment aspect of it. So one thing that comes to mind as we talk about potential and that recruitment process initially is you go in for an interview and the employer is like, you know what, it's great that you have all these soft skills, or it's great that you have this foundation, but unfortunately you don't have enough experience that we need at this time. But then on the flip side of it, you're just like, but how do I get that experience if you're not willing to give that to me? So when you are working with small to mid-sized businesses, helping them understand, okay, what is the right talent to get through the door? This is the potential that you might want to consider, and not only think about this unicorn. How do you help someone understand that, hey, like there's a time and a place where we can create space for you to grow, but then other times we're at a stage of the growth where it's like, we need someone that can hit the ground running. Like, I'm not sure if that question makes sense, but I think it's a dilemma that a lot of people go through as they're trying to advance in the corporate world, or as they're trying to get their foot in the door with a new company. Hey?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you brought that forward, because I think, I don't know, I maybe I shouldn't call it shame, but I think it's hard for organizations to reckon with that. And I actually, on Friday, I had a conversation with a client, and they were talking about how, I want to go with this person, but I'm not sure because this one has this. And I'm like, what is it that you need right now? And help them remember like all the different things we've been talking about over the last 2, 3 months as they've been preparing for this hire. And they were like, you know what? I just needed to talk this out. I needed to brainstorm. And it's like, you can't afford to wait right now. Maybe in the future and maybe in the past, you could have waited, and that's okay. So helping them understand what you need right now doesn't mean that, you have to make always the best decision for the business and for the time that you're in. Because I know for me, I'm getting ready to make a hire as well. And I know that I need somebody who can at least hit the ground running, but I also want someone who I can mentor. But there's a certain skill set that I'm looking for, as well as the potential. So you have to look at, where am I now? What is it that I need? What can this person bring into the organization? And look at that as the holistic person. Because so many times, as we said, like people want to check the box and only look at the technical skills or only look at the soft skills. Oh, they went to this school, or they seem like they would fit in with the team. Yes, but what does that really mean? And how does it impact your culture? And so I think those are things that companies wrestle with all the time. But it's important to say, right now, we need somebody who knows it, and they're gonna like jump right in. And maybe down the road that there will be opportunity to hire someone who maybe is more junior.
Amazing. And one of the biggest things that you do when empowering small to mid-sized businesses is the culture piece, right? So when you think about growth and empowering these leaders to model some of the behaviors that actually exemplify the values in itself, what would you say is one of the most difficult things that businesses comes to bring that to life? Because it's one thing to look on a piece of paper and be like, hey, this is what the feel should be like, this is what we want it to look like, but it's another thing to actually create behaviors and change to back that up, right?
I needed a moment with that because it's so powerful. And that's Gil and I do a lot of that work together actually, and it's so fun. And so what I'm finding is that some clients are wanting to rebrand, they're working with marketing agencies. That's great, but you have to connect it into the culture work. And I had a conversation with a different consultant this morning, and we were talking about that as well, because a lot of times that's the gap for organizations. People know marketing, they know what it can do for you, the importance and significance of it for a business, but we forget that all your values and connected in into culture, the employee voice, the whole experience, and that starts before somebody starts with you. We forget about all those things sometimes, and it's all connected. And so I think for me, it's like making sure that that's incorporated into everything they're doing. And who we say we are is actually what's reflected in the brand that our employees see us as, and the brand that our clients and other stakeholders, our community see us as. And so those are definitely the pieces that we want to make sure are incorporated. But I think sometimes people don't always they don't always look at that, and it is our values that drive the behaviors in the actions in the organization. We can say we have a value of diversity, but if people don't believe it and they don't see that representation inside, well, now their behaviors are going to be, they're not going to probably be as engaged, right? They're not going to do the best for customers. You're not going to get the best creativity and innovation out of them. So, how does it really lend itself to that? And that connecting those dots for people is really important. Culture is dynamic and it should be woven throughout. So, every single process it's touching. It's not just like, here's our values, we'll stick them up, we got a cute graphic, and now we're done. We've done our work. There's more work to do. Spoiler alert.
And you mentioned that culture is a dynamic process, right? And I feel like that's the same thing with employer branding. So when you are helping businesses set up their employer brand, maybe what are 1 to 3 insights where you're like, hey, I really want you to keep this in mind?
Yeah, I think, it really is. It's kind of that employer DNA, as I describe it, which I think is the culture. Who are you? Who do you say you are? And I think that's why some people are rebranding. So, who are you? What do you want to be known for? What do your employees want? From their career success, how are you setting them up for success? And there's this, kind of a dynamic of bringing all those things together because that is your brand. Your brand is how do your employees see you, and the employee, they can be ambassadors for you. They can do your marketing on social media for you, not necessarily in their role, but there are companies who do this really well where their employees are out there speaking such great things about them, and they're not all recruiters. So it's looking at that. What are your processes and your infrastructure, and are the things that you subscribe to or ascribe to do, like, are those things that you're able to really support? Because a lot of people have all these fluffy goals, or we make up these random metrics that aren't even reasonable and that aren't the right thing. So I would say look at what your goals are, look at who you are, and then see, does that match, and is there an operational support system? You need a solid foundation for that. And it's a lot easier than people think. You can do a Google form to get employee voice. There's nothing fancy that you have to do. You can't get fancy. And so I would say then, it's operationalizing and actually taking the action and the follow up, because a lot of times we get these lofty goals and then it's like, great, well, our employees have heard us talk about this stuff for 2 years and we haven't done anything with it. Dust it off the shelf, make it happen.
Speaking of making it happen, I noticed that initially when an organization starts with a new idea or a new rebrand, everyone's on board, everyone's behavior is aligned, right? And then somewhere along the way, behaviors no longer align, whether it's at the leadership level or at the frontline level. And then it becomes really confusing. Okay, so like, wait, what do we stand for again, or what do we want this to feel like? Like, there's a Kool-Aid that is given to us at one point, but then there's misalignment left, right, and center. So, what is like a process or a system that you guys kind of suggest to your clients to be like, hey, like, you know what? Pay attention to this. Like, have you noticed that this actually impacted this, or have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Like, I would love to hear your thoughts on this piece.
And that's, I hope that people listening will take value in that, even asking that question. So many times we don't pause enough to ask the question, and that is a lot of times where it goes awry. Also, we have to understand that change management in its very nature is meant to change. It is meant to be a cyclical cycle, if you will, because there are always things that we can adjust, that something will change either internally in the environment or externally that will shift what we need to do. And even if it went perfect, okay, you still need to do that after action to say, okay, why did it go well? What went well? What are all those moving pieces and nuances that made it go so great? And then if it didn't, where did it go wrong? Where was the breakdown? And we need to really understand, do people need retraining? And part of what I would say, and I tell my clients this all the time, is that we have to be cautious to not blame a person. It could be the system, it could be the process, it could be, that they do need to be retrained, upskilled, reskilled. And so I find that those are the pieces where people, if they don't do that deep dive or they implement said thing and now they haven't checked in with people to see how's it going, or they haven't prepared them for it on the front end. I had a client today who said, I feel like we should tell people that this is going on and we're going to be changing something. I'm like, I feel like that's an excellent idea. Let me tell you, like, yes, that is a great idea. And here's how I can help support you in that. And so it's that recognition, but then also being okay with, you know what, this didn't go right. We're not going to shame ourselves. We're not going to blame people. We're going to find out and truly diagnose the root cause of it, what went wrong, and let's make it better for the next time.
I love that so much because through that you demonstrated empathy, right? In a sense that it's like if you can tell yourself that there's no shame in the mistake that I made, you can then in turn understand that when someone else makes mistakes, hopefully you can be like, they're human, it's bound to happen, it's a learning process. And so one of your biggest superpowers is empathy and active listening. How do you help leaders develop this muscle?
It is sometimes a challenge. And I feel like even having you ask that causes me to reflect, right? Because I'm naturally an empath. I naturally have empathy. And it's why I bring it into the business and my clients. And so many times I find myself holding space. And I think one of the ways I do that and why it's a superpower is I do it naturally. And so it models it for other people and it causes them to have the emotional intelligence to pause or to be like, what would Tiffany say? Or to say, I was about to do this and then I thought, what would Tiffany say? Or what would she think about this decision? And that's so powerful to me and impactful, not because it's an ego stroke, but I think because it really means that I'm having impact on the day to day and how they think about how they interact with their employees. What employee experience are they creating? And so, and also, one of the gifts that I love to give them is it is okay to give yourself space. I don't want my leaders in burnout, and a lot of leaders are today. So it's giving them that space and the empathy and having them be like, you really do listen. Wow, I can't believe you remember that. Or that meant so much to me. And it's things like their birthday, their anniversary, our anniversary of working together, all the little things that matter to them in their families' lives and their business when they celebrate an anniversary. And that matters so much to people. So holding space for them because it demonstrates to them, here's how you hold space for other people. Here's how we don't, we might be frustrated with an employee and that they're not where they need to be. Here's how we can do that with kindness. But there's the flip side of that where people are too nice and then they don't hold people accountable. And so with empathy, we talk about what those impacts are and how we still can give feedback and be kind to each other.
I have so much appreciation of that call out because I don't think people understand enough the ways that you can change someone's life at work. Those little gestures that you talked about, the anniversaries, the recognizing them as a human and not just the results that they can ultimately produce for you, right? And like you said, it's a delicate dance because you don't want to be so nice that you're not holding people accountable. There's no boundaries, and then you're not again, being the business and operating and making profit, right? So when we talk about some of those unhealthier behaviors, I've noticed that some organizations will keep toxic leaders because they can produce amazing results. So as you chat with some of your clients, like, what is the business case for you to be like, hey, like, you know what, I understand that these are your high performers and they're creating results, but their toxic behaviors are actually taking you backwards.
I feel so grateful that my clients, they have such good cultures, and they're very intentional about building those. So we don't run into situations really where there is someone toxic. And I feel like if that happens, and depending on where I meet a client in their journey, there are a couple where it's like that's how we came into our journey, and that's okay too. It's like that recognition and trying to figure out like how do we impact this, because we know that this person maybe is impacting others. And so I think in that case, it's looking at, what is the right step? And I think that people often think, oh, HR people, they hire people and they fire people. So now if this person's involved, somebody's getting fired. And that's not the case always. And so my part of my role is to help my leaders, my organizations, and even their employees, like the whole organization, understand that you have options. There are options. So we could go one way, and here are the risks and recommendations of each option. So I want people to understand, it doesn't have to be one and done, but if somebody's truly toxic, I'm going to let you know. You probably don't want them hanging around for too long, because here is the risk, the many risks in an organization. And so I think having people understand that is really key, so that they don't keep folks around. And even, people who are nice, they sometimes do it too. It's not always like, hey, this is our best performer. It's like we just don't feel right about letting them know. It's like you've had 17 conversations. What's going to shift, right? And if you feel like there is some redeeming of this person, then let's have a conversation about what that might look like. Maybe it's a performance improvement plan with the goal of not getting rid of them, because a lot of people use that as a means to an end, which is not the right thing to do. So if you're listening, they should be corrective, not to try to get rid of somebody. But there's so many options, but having somebody toxic in the workforce is not one of them.
Well, thank you for sharing that insight. And you did a really great job even highlighting the super nice people too, right? Because I've seen that also, where they're super nice and they're nice to have around, but they're not actually contributing to the bottom line, and it actually impacts the morale for the rest of the group, right? Because then they have to carry the rest of the burden. So switching gears a little bit, you co-authored the book "Can a Zebra Change Its Stripes?" Right? And how have you kind of incorporated maybe one principle or so from that book into how you engage with your clients and kind of teach them on building strong cultures and employer brands and stuff?
I love that. So unique. I would say it is the true core of what Can a Zebra Change Its Stripes is about, and that's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so many times, an employer might be bringing someone on, they're looking for that culture fit, culture add, trying to figure out, how does this person fit in? And it's back to where we started at the top of this conversation is, are we trying to fit someone into a box? And I'm not saying that that is not important, that we want to, have someone who can integrate. I've started using that language a little bit more versus like culture fit, culture add, because that means you can bring your whole self. That means that if my stripes look different than this other zebra stripes, or I'm a whole different animal, that is welcome, and I can still feel like I'm included and that I belong, and I can have influence over other people. And the book does that really well through the storyline of, we might be different, but it doesn't mean we can't get to the same place. It doesn't mean we can't coexist. It doesn't mean that I can't bring in different ideas, and that, hey, look what we're able to do. This is because of this person. And so I think it really has those great leadership lessons and just human lessons too. We really are stronger together. Diversity is a strength. And that's the message that I wanted to send through the book. And frankly, that our suffer diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging value, and which is one of my personal values, bringing that forward, I really want that to be woven into every single thing I do. So I don't care if you have stripes. I had a friend who got married in Mexico, and it was a donkey with painted zebra stripes that we were riding, and we didn't even know that. So, like, whether it's a donkey with zebra painted stripes, or it's the actual zebra, or it's a lion, or whatever you have, we can all, kind of come together and bring our diversity and leverage it as a strength. And that's the message I really wanted to share.
I love that it's in like a storybook format that way because it's like you can teach these lessons to children at a younger age in a way that they can actually comprehend and hopefully appreciate one day as they progress through their life and careers, right? So I guess as we slowly wrap up, when it comes to unleashing an individual or an organization's potential, what is one thing that you've noticed, whether from it's an organization perspective or a leader perspective or a personal perspective? What's one thing that we can do to help unleash individual and organization's potential?
Oh, there's so many, but I do think that empathy it goes such a long way. And for me, I know you only asked me for one, but for me, it's kind of a combination of what I deem as my superpower of empathy and active listening. Because if we hold that space and we open that up for people, then we invite all the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Then we invite what they are feeling and thinking and new perspectives and creativity and innovation. And for me, like, I think that is something so important as a critical mix. And what I've seen, even I don't do a lot of one on one coaching anymore, but when I have done it, and when I still do at times, and part of my role is always going to be coaching as an HR consultant. But when we open that space up, it builds confidence. Whether we're mentoring somebody, we manage them, we're collaborating with them on a project, we're working in the community, I'm on 3 boards. Like, there are so many ways that people feel safe to come to me. And that really does wonders when you're looking at trying to help somebody elevate their potential. When they feel heard, seen, valued, and appreciated, and they know you're going to listen and not just like listen to jump in with a response, but you really hear me, because sometimes all people need is a space to listen. And they know that they're not going to be judged for what they say and afraid to ask a question because you have low empathy or EQ, and you're not like really sensing into what they need. And when you listen actively, you can watch body language. You can be like, oh, I think now's not the time to say this, or they said they're fine, but I think something else is behind that and they're faking a smile. That I'm always in the places, well, most times, where I need to be, because my ears are always open and so is my heart. And I would say for people, that is how you capture people's hearts. And that is how you really bring them in and create safe spaces.
That just hit the feels for me because I think about all the leaders who've taken the time to care about me as a human being. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I will move mountains for you. Like when shit hits the fan, I got you, right? Because it's like, I know that you genuinely care. And when you ask, how are you in a one-on-one, or what's kind of impacting your work, or what's impacting your ability to do X, Y, and Z, you're not afraid to be like, you know what, it's actually this, and I'm going to come with a solution so I can help you help me at the end, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I guess my final question to you is like, what's one thing that you're working on right now that you're super excited about?
I could shout Gil Cohen out all day. He knows this. That's how we're connected. I'm super grateful he connected us. But I'm really excited about the work we're doing with this leadership team. We are really working through like just values and behaviors and helping it connect into like their rebrand that they're doing, and helping them hone their leadership skills, because they're like, we don't know it all. Help us. Like, they have invested and they've told their team, this is why these consultants are here, not so that, it's that change management piece of it. We've prepared our team so they understand this is how invested we are in you, and we're going through it too. We're going to clarify some roles. We're going to, so he and I are consulting, and we're meeting with them one-on-one. We're meeting with them in a group. We're also looking at, different, their leadership, their different levels of leadership, and helping them understand how that connects and what their vision is, what's their long-term vision. And it is just so fun. It is so strategic and such deep work, and we just do our best work together. So it's really fun knowing that we're impacting their culture, and it's so, so exciting.
I'm excited for the both of you guys because after meeting Gil and connecting with him multiple times and then being able to connect with you as well, I'm like, you two are two of the most genuine, hardworking, caring, and you have this charisma to you where it's just like, tell me more, right? Because it's like you're very good at listening and then unpacking things with people in a way where it's a safe space. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that work that you'll do there, and just to continue to follow the work that both you and Gil will be doing. And if you haven't followed Gil on LinkedIn, please take the time to connect with him. He's absolutely incredible. And so are you, Tiffany. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and your expertise. I know a lot of people have gained golden nuggets from this. And to everyone who's taken the time to tune into this episode, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. And I can't wait for you to join me on my next episode.